Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. Hope you enjoy. Story number 1. Bloodsport, written by Mad Mechanic. For the convenience of all Coalition species, the dates, measurements, and terminology will be automatically converted to the preferred language of the reader. Following the advent of bioforgers, mass-producibles, nanite swarms, short-range quantum entanglement, and chronal stasis fields, Coalition scientists created the revitalization chamber. The concept was simple. Once the patient's life science fell beneath an acceptable range, they would automatically be teleported into a chamber with a stasis field. While they are in there, a swarm of bioforge-wielding nanites would begin placing them back together. The whole process takes only 15 seconds. With the creation of the technology came a rebirth of something which was outlawed millennia ago: Bloodsport. Since there was now no longer a way for combatants to die in these competitions, there was no part of Coalition law which prohibited it. These battles were fought in the way of arenas old: eliminate the enemy team to win. It was a good concept at first, but modern weaponry meant that most games didn't last very long. Interest in the sport gradually declined. Then we met the humans. Now, to understand why this was an important event, we first need to understand the human mind, as well as their brutal homeworld. Despite looking and usually acting like a paradise world species, humans originated from a hellhole known as Terra, or in their more archaic records, as Earth. Terra is, to date, the only inhabited world that bears the classification of apocalyptic. On their world, everything is constantly trying to kill everything else. Even the bloody plants are dangerous. Bearing this in mind, remember that humans are low on the food chain, that before they began building cities, even their prey could easily eat them. This led to two interesting adaptations: adaptability and the innate ability to turn anything into a weapon if they tried hard enough. The effects of these two factors on their society and psyche are evident to this day. Even their earlier societies were extremely warlike, and throughout their history, wars were the greatest source of inspiration and progress to their people. As a result, they never ended Bloodsport, they merely civilized it. Battles became gladiatorial arenas, which in turn became combat sports, and then they first began simulating 3D spaces with machines. One of their first moves was to create simulated arenas that even the untrained everyman could partake in. So what does this have to do with Bloodsport, I hear you ask? Well, everything, really. When the Terran Imperium joined the Systems Coalition, they took one look at our arenas and unanimously thought to themselves, "Yep, we can do something with this," and set about introducing the Coalition to new forms of Bloodsport. Capture the flag, King of the Hill, trouble in Traitor Town, a battle royale, payload, etc. The list goes on. The point is that they have brought back the interest in Bloodsport and have given us a fresh outlook on how diverse things can truly be. But besides that, Terrans dominate the games for years just because of former experience. But it didn't take long for everyone else to catch up. Soon, the Galactic Network was flooded with highlight reels of the achievements of the champions in these games. Still, there were many champions, but only a few legends. Only a few who would be etched into the history for centuries to come. It is both my duty and honor to write down some of their names and achievements here. Marcus Argenta. In the TTT match of 2170, Marcus went down in history for the first instance of a match being completed without a traitor ever being caught. Even the crowd had no idea that he was a killer until he eventually stood atop the tallest building in the arena and cried out, "I think that's everyone." To this day, TTT players in the Interplanetary League study that match from his perspective to learn effective ways to both counter traitors and effectively eliminate all other players. Solus Address. Although I doubt a mad cyborg of Mars requires an introduction, it would be a crime against the loyal Bloodsport fans not to do so. In 2500, the payload match was taking place on the planet Error. No available transcription in user's language. The entirety of Solus's team was still on a regen clock, and the heavy hitters would be some of the last ones out. She was on her own. At some point she pulled a pin on the pressure grenade, the crowd expecting that she was taking a quick way back to her team's home base by forcing herself to regen. What she did next created a whole new strategy for playing Bloodsport. She dropped a grenade and jumped forward, and it went off. The pressure of the blast sent her flying towards the cart, and you can imagine the surprise on the Zaltaran team when an adrenaline-fueled Terran cyborg came flying at them with a shotgun in one hand and an automated turret in the other. By the time the rest of the Terrans had gotten back to the payload, they found that Solus had set up a turret on a ledge overlooking the payload. In the meantime, she had been sent back to the regen chamber. It was a kamikaze move, but it won the game for the Terrans. Argus, Magnus, and Cullum Drakov, a triple terror from Europa. In the Coalition Battle Royal of 24-21, the three brothers were representing Terra in the 100-species free-for-all. Most people remember the score most of all, as the Terrans scored a total of 158 kills, more than half the number of the participating contestants. In the end, it came down to a duel between Magnus and the lost Andari combatant. The duel ended in a Terran victory as Magnus miraculously planted his last round in his pistol in the skull of his enemy. Thus, the Terrans had claimed yet another victory. As you can clearly see, the Terrans are built for Bloodsport and are the reason that it became popular again. At least, the bloody Deathworlders didn't start a war during First Contact. Judging by how religiously they play, I never want to know how well they fight. End of story. Story number 2. Weak yet powerful, written by Incrediblus Ho. Opekth let out a last sigh, looking at the door in front of him. He had revised and practiced his presentation many times. He wasn't the best public speaker, and how he was the one chosen to do this was beyond him. But saying no wasn't an option. It was now or never. He looked at his paper one last time. Coming from Sol 3, the Federation of Earth has accomplished many great feats, he read out loud. He skimmed over the rest of the script. He was supposed to present this to the room of envoys and other stellar nations. His expertise, although, wasn't diplomacy. He was the biologist at heart, and although he had studied the humans carefully and met with their envoys many times, he wasn't confident in his ability to represent them well enough. He readied himself and opened the door. There he stood, his purple skin, his 4 legs and bulky body graced the podium. He started speaking. Greetings, honorable envoys. I am Opekth of the Ogpeth Enclaves. As you may know, I have been selected to inform you of humanity. Humanity hails from Sol 3, also known as Earth. Earth is what we would consider to be a wet world, as 80% of its surface consists of water. Besides that, the planet is slightly above average gravity, and only one sun. With all those details out the way, let us first look at humanity as a race, and then look at the Federation of Earth. Humanity, as a race, can be best described as a weak, albeit graceful, and intelligent, albeit foolish. To elaborate on my first point, their very method of locomotion is them falling through the air, predicting where they are landing, and then doing it again in a smooth rhythm. However, they are weak, both relative to us and relative to other animals on their planet. Add on to that their lack of claws or fangs, and they need their endurance, speed, and reflexes. For my second point, they haven't existed for an incredibly long time, and yet they have already achieved FTL. From the moment they existed, they started creating tools, first primitive tools, and then later they learned how to work metal. Tools and tool usage has always been very important to them. However, they often do something without asking themselves the question if they should do it. And yet they have found the craftsmanship and science are more effective tools of war than any claw is. When we first made contact with them, we noticed that all of their troops were armed with tools. When we mentioned that we enhanced our claws with metal to create weapons of war, they thought us stupid and inefficient. He finished. A few of the envoys had already raised their paws. He grimaced. He just wanted to get this over with. With reluctance, he turned his 4-point eyes to one of the envoys and allowed him to speak. Are they hostile? The envoy plainly asked. About that. The Federation of Earth, as they call themselves, is a loose coalition of all the different states and colonies in the Turk sector. or as the humans have come to call it, the solar sector. As I have already said, their greatest weapons is their supreme craftsmanship and technological prowess. They are not inherently hostile, but when provoked, are a force to be reckoned with. They are horrible warriors, but still dangerous. I may seem to contradict myself. They are weak, yet perfect soldiers. Horrible warriors, but perfect soldiers. They don't have the bestial ferocity of the Ngakak, or the strength of the Kithpth. They have their guns, and according to them, that's enough. And I believe them. To summarize this all for you honourable envoys, they are weak, but powerful. I would quickly like to thank our Tier 5 patrons and channel members: Casper Arnholtz, Cam Maxwell, it's difficult to pronounce, Lord Arishikal, Dragzoon, WRE, and Arcadian. Thank you very much.